My name is Carlene Hightower, and the life stage I am presenting today is adolescence with the perception of African Americans viewed as an inferior race. Adolescent stage usually begins 10 to 12 years of age, lasting until 18 to 22 years of age. Around these times, developing an identity and independence is extremely important. However, dependency on their parents still exists. The biopsychosocial at these ages continues to fluctuate. Adolescents are preparing for puberty. Puberty is the rapid change in physical and sexual growth. During puberty, present is the primary sex characteristics as well as secondary sex characteristics. Primary sex characteristics deal with reproduction, while secondary sex characteristics is associated with gender but not related to reproduction. For example, hair growth, breast development, and voice and skin changes. Puberty starts between the ages of 12 to 15. It depends on the individual when puberty will take place. Some experience puberty earlier than others. Cognitive skills become more complex and sophisticated during the adolescent stage. Adolescents are able to tussle with complex issues such as morality and spirituality. Adolescents enter into the formal operation stage, which Piaget mentions the ability to think abstractly. Multiple aspects of an event or object is considered at once. Formulate hypotheses when manipulating certain variables, and the ability to analyze events or objects to derive at a conclusion. It is not unusual for teens to struggle and have limited logic, judgment, reasoning, decision making, or any other higher order of thinking due to the white matter and prefrontal cortex still developing in teens and axons still making neural connections. Identity reaches an adult stage for adolescents. Erickson's theory helps with mastering the environment with age-appropriate tasks being acquired. Stage 5, which is identity versus identity confusion. This is a very important stage in the lives of adolescents because they are developing an understanding of who they are and who they want to be. Now, and shaping who adolescents want to become comes from who adolescents interact with. Therefore, family and school relationships, as well as environmental factors and values, matter a great deal. Here's a video describing and giving a concrete understanding of what Erickson was communicating through stage 5, identity versus identity confusion.
So far, in our exploration of how the mind grows, we've talked about a lot of different philosophies and models and ways of looking at things. But here's a surprisingly useful tool for understanding developmental psychology: The Breakfast Club. This video, by the way, will contain Breakfast Club spoilers, that classic 80s movie about a band of teenagers stuck in detention one fateful Saturday morning. Do they do Saturday detentions anymore? That was never a thing in my school. That was crazy, the idea that kids would come in on a weekend for detention. You got the hoodlum, the jock, the nerd, the princess, and the so-called basket case, and at first they're all salty and standoffish with each other because, let's face it, American high schools are sort of a breeding ground for that kind of thing. But as the day progresses, they start to open up and share things and have a little fun by way of a dance montage. And at some point they each kind of crack, revealing something very important about adolescence in the process, which is the struggle between the need to stand out and the need to belong. All these kids feel tremendous pressure to maintain their image in their particular group, in part because there's just some security in belonging to a group, even if that group gets picked on by another group. And so they wear the corresponding diamond earrings, combat boots, letterman's jackets, and spectacles, and act how their roles dictate. But the thing is, none of those kids are satisfied with their outward identities. Instead, they're all stuck in the classic teenage struggle, one that German psychoanalyst Erik Erikson, yes, his name is actually Erik Erikson, called the crisis between identity and role confusion. In other words, their newly forming identities were at odds with other people's expectations of what roles they should play. Hence the confusion. The past couple weeks we've been talking about childhood as a crucial period of growth, learning, and change, and it definitely is, but anyone who's ever seen a John Hughes movie knows that there's way more to growing up than just that. And I got some news for you. From adolescence into adulthood and into old age, the drama of your personal psychological development never ceases. Never. So get used to it. Today, most psychologists view our psychological development as a lifelong process. From infant to adolescent to adult to card-carrying senior citizen, people keep right on changing. Just as Piaget gave us a helpful framework for thinking about early development, other scholars have given us ideas about how we develop through the rest of our lives, particularly Erik Erikson. Like many others, Erikson believed our personalities develop in a predetermined order, which he outlined in an 8-stage model. And each stage, from infancy to old age, is defined by its own predominant issue or crisis. If it freaks you out to think that you will always be dealing with a crisis at every stage of your life, we can just call them issues. Since we already talked a lot about early childhood development, I'm going to skip ahead to the teenage meat of it, but you can consult this table to learn about the rest. Erikson defined the adolescent years, or stage 5, as starting in our teens and extending for some as far as our early 20s, and as The Breakfast Club so artfully depicted, its main crisis is the one of identity versus role confusion. Teen years are marked by lots of physical changes in the body and brain and sex hormones, along with the growing independence, but also a real need to belong to something. This often angsty time is when teens re-examine their identities, figuring out how to both blend in and how to stand out, often by trying on different roles. Maybe they're experimenting with punk rock or hockey or theater or ancient philosophy. Maybe sophomore year they're preppy, junior year they got green hair. Hopefully a person comes out of this stage with a reintegrated sense of self, but this stage can be particularly confusing, as I'm sure anybody watching this video can attest to. But of course, that's not the last crisis. Sorry.
In the next part of this presentation, I will be discussing how African Americans are viewed as an inferior race and how adolescents are affected by it. Punitive policies have been put into place for African Americans. Instead of protecting African Americans like any other race, police have been using the law to inflict violence on African Americans. From the article, War Against the People, Killer Cops and Community Terrorism, Floyd W. Hayes III informs his readers about the philosophy and practice of the LAPD under Bill Parker, the chief police, as give no slack and take no shh from anyone, confront and command, control the streets at all times, always be aggressive, stop crime before they happen, seek them out, shake them down, make that arrest, never admit that the department has done anything wrong. In the study, Don't Never Forget Now, You're a Black Man in America, intersections of race, class, and gender in encounters with police. 38 interviewers, black and white, male and female, were asked open-ended questions about racial identities and racial prominence. 14 out of 16 black participants linked discrimination to racial identity, and the 9 out of 16 experienced the discrimination with police, while only one of the white participants did. Police are sanctioned to apply excessive force when pertaining to African American males and females. Why? Before I address why, I would like to share a video.
Now to that Texas police officer, in trouble after that confrontation at a pool party was caught on camera. The officer has been placed on leave after he was seen slamming a young girl to the ground and pulling his gun on the group of teens. ABC's Tom Yamas is here with more on that. Good morning, Tom.
Robin, good morning to you. When you watch this video, you see things started to turn really ugly really fast. There are a lot of kids and not a lot of cops, chaos, and then what some are calling a questionable police takedown. This morning, a white Texas police officer on administrative leave after the cell phone video captures him pulling this 15-year-old bikini-clad girl down who is black. Slamming her head. Then holding her down on the ground for several minutes. The situation prompting questions of excessive force as the officer is seen taking out his gun as two others appear to rush in to help the girl. The incident began outside a pool party in an affluent suburb of Dallas, where, according to the police, officers responded after residents called to complain about several teenagers who did not have permission to use the community pool and refused to leave. The cell phone video does not show the moment that sparked the incident, but does show the situation escalating.
Whoa, sir, get on the ground. Oh, look, sir. I told you to stay. You're down on the ground.
Sorry, sir, we just came for a birthday party, please.
First, 3 officers, then an additional 9 officers end up responding to the crowd of about 50 teens.
Don't make me run around here with 30 pounds of here on the sun because you want to screw around out here.
Local station KDFW spoke with the girl after the incident.
And then I'm guessing he thought we were saying rude stuff to him. He grabbed me and he twisted my arm on the back of my back, and he shoved me in the grass. And he started pulling the back of my braids, and I was telling him that he can get off me because my back was hurting really bad.
That girl was not arrested. The officer in question could not be reached for comment. 2 officers from the department's Internal Affairs Department are working this case right now. Police say no one was injured, but just to give you an idea at how big this story is growing, last night more than 1 million people saw the clip on YouTube. This morning, George, more than 4 million.
I can believe it. It's such a shock to see that gun come out. Okay, Tom, thanks very much.
Why is it acceptable for police to apply excessive force? Well, we can look back to historical times of slavery and neo-slavery, where African Americans were deprived of positive human qualities. Therefore, African Americans received negative representations from white Americans, such as being violent, hostile, and threatening, to justify vicious crimes like verbal harassment, torture, and lynching. There are also some theoretical reasons. White Americans see African Americans as a minority, subordinate race, lacking proper resources, and less likely to hold authority figures accountable. In the study, Protesting While Black mentioned white supremacy of authority being threatened, therefore policing harshly when pertaining to African Americans is justified in order to maintain the power. I would like to share the next video of how others in the media perceive the cops' actions towards the adolescents in the clip shared earlier in the presentation. Following is the perspective of the young male who taped the encounters.
More news coming out of McKinney, Texas. First of all, the officer involved, Eric Casebolt, breaking right now as we are live on the air, apparently has resigned. 2 different sources saying that he has resigned. That is welcome news for anyone who is rational, but there are many people who are not. So right after this incident occurred, you could have guessed, if you were paying attention to American news, what would happen next, which is that Fox News and some others would rally to the defense of the officer. I mean, you're throwing around black kids at a pool party, they're teenagers, you're slamming them to the ground, you're pulling your gun on them. Well, of course the conservatives in America are going to stick up for you, including some people in the community. So let's get started. Here's Megyn Kelly talking about this issue.
He certainly did not have control of her. It looked kind of bad the way he was attempting to get her on the ground.
And you find, I mean, I'm sure he didn't know she was 14 at the time. Maybe he did. We can't assume it. But now we know. And she looked like a young woman.
And you hear the girl in the video saying, call my mother, please. Call my mother, because she understands what's getting ready, what could possibly happen
Listen,
to her.
The girl was no saint either. He had told her to leave, and she continued to linger. And, you
That's
know,
true,
when the cop
Megan,
tells you
but
to
if
leave,
you look-
get out.
She's no saint either. I mean, she's a teenager. She's in a bikini. God knows what she could be hiding in there. And she did, of course, the gravest crime in America, which is to perhaps, in the perception of that officer, slightly disrespect her. Now, is the officer busy trying to figure out who was in the fight? No. They just came in literally barreling or barrel rolling into the scene, and there was no effort to figure out, wait, who was in the fight? Who was in the fight? No. They just go, boom, go and target all the black kids. The white kid who recorded all this, he's going to weigh in on this in a little bit, and he has a really interesting perspective. But no, you can't be innocent enough in America if you're a black person. As Fox News says, there's no saint. There's no saint. Why? I mean, with Trayvon Martin, I'll tell you, he once smoked pot. You got him. He deserved to be shot in the chest, right? And now they can't call her a thug. She's just a 14-year-old at a pool party. No saint. Why? Why is she no saint? No, it's standing around. Even Mark Furman, the notoriously racist cop that Fox News actually uses as an expert. Isn't that amazing? He's the guy from the O.J. Simpson trial who has that enormous racial history. The expert on Fox News. Even he's like, well, I look really bad, Megan. Megan's like, 50-50. The only guy talking sense there is Richard Fowler, who is, of course, part of the TYT network. Okay, now, Sean Hannity is going to find 1,000 other excuses on his radio program.
There was a huge disturbance, and juveniles were fighting, and then they refused to listen to the police officers and then leave. And at one point, the officer, getting very stern, he used curse words. What do you want him to do? The kids aren't listening to them. Anyway, he tries to round them up. Things escalate. He pulled out his gun. Anyway, that led to an incident with a girl that happened to be, that he had to put his knee on her back. You're never going to see an arrest that looks good on video, especially an arrest that is being resisted or people that are not listening when police officers are saying, leave now, leave now. Doesn't a cop have a lot more to think about than just that girl, especially after the cops repeatedly asked these kids that weren't invited to the party to leave? In other words, while he is working on trying to get this girl under control, is it not a risk to the officer that someone can come up behind him? And I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. All we know is that you can hear the chaos and see the chaos. Obviously, there's no respect being shown the officers. Now, back when I was a kid, we had our little run-ins, and we knew the cops by name in our neighborhood. And the cops said to disperse, you dispersed. I mean, now we're watching people say, no, we're not leaving. I mean, it now compounds the problem. It makes their job 10 times more difficult. It makes their decision that much more clouded because they don't know if those same kids that won't respect them and take their orders to leave, are they going to come in and hit them with a shank in the back as they're arresting somebody?
A shank in the back. First of all, you don't hit someone with a shank. Okay, you stab them with a shank. Okay, I'm glad to know that Hannity is not well versed in prison culture. Okay, but it doesn't matter how innocent you are. It doesn't matter if you're a teenager at a pool party. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in a bowling alley. It doesn't matter if you're walking in the street and you're driving your car. It doesn't matter. If you're black, you might be hiding a shank somewhere, right? And look, the video seems as clear as day, right? We showed it to you yesterday. You've seen it all over the web. No. When it's clear against the white officer, what does Hannity say? Well, it's clouded. Nobody can tell. There's no way of knowing. If he's got any kind of evidence on his side, it's definitive. We got it. No, it's right there. You can see it on the tape. In this case, well, does seem to be slamming the girl onto the ground and pulling his gun on people and stuff. Anyway, if the facts are not on your side, you just keep saying anyway, and no one knows. No one knows because we're all blind. We can't see it. But finally, the part that really got me about Hannity was, well, if the officers tell you to leave, just leave. It's that simple. How dare you disrespect commands from an officer? Said the guy who had Cliven Bundy on his show and supported him endlessly as not only Bundy, but all his supporters on that ranch pulled weapons on the cops. They pointed weapons at the police officers, wouldn't leave. Can you imagine if cops went into the middle of anything, a party, a gathering of black people, and the black people pulled weapons on them, and Hannity had them on the program and said, good job, way to poke the weapons on the cops and tell them you're not going anywhere, you got Second Amendment rights. That's what he told Bundy. What an unbelievable hypocrite. Okay, it only gets worse, doesn't get better. Now we're going to go to a Texas radio host, God help us. His name is Michael Berry. Let's watch.
Let me suggest that for the people who end up getting in fights with the cops, shut your mouth. Let me ask you, how many among you would put on a badge and a police uniform today? How many of you would put on a badge, police uniform, and be the first to respond by yourself to a crowd of teenagers, amped up? Watch them. Man, they're screaming, you get out of here. Who are you? You don't know what you get out. You get out. Who are you? I mean, you can't do that. No, man, we gonna get you. You bet. I mean, you're talking about like jungle animals. I mean, this is wild, crazy, out of control.
Jungle animals. What racism in America? No. They're all wild and crazy, yelling, we're going to get you. No one yelled, we're going to get you. He made that up. We watched the whole tape. We showed you the whole tape yesterday. Nobody yelled that. That's a lie. Who would go by themselves? Well, he didn't go by himself. He had two other cops there on the tape, and more cops arrived later. So where's the by yourself part? Who would go into a gang of teenagers? I would. And he said, who would put on a badge and have all the weaponry and go in the middle of teenagers? I'd go in the middle of white teenagers, black teenagers, Asian teenagers. They're at a pool party. But no. When you're black, you're always dangerous. And if you're white, you don't have to listen to cops. You can pull weapons on them, okay? But if you're black, just shut up and know your role, you jungle animal. Is this clear enough yet? No, it's still not clear? Okay, more for Michael Berry.
He showed up to people, and yes, they're probably white people, scared to death, peeking through the blinds. Oh my God, there's a bunch of black people, and they're out on the streets, and they're fighting and carrying out, and they're playing that music from Jay-Z. And they're scared to death. That's who his bosses are. He's there to keep the peace in his community. But a little bit of advice to those punks. When the cops show up, they're outnumbered. They have to take control of the situation. The best thing you can do is get down, keep your mouth shut, and let order get restored first. Just comply. For that moment, just comply.
Punks. The people who started the fight, according to almost every witness on the scene. In fact, the women who started it haven't said anything, so according to every witness on the scene, were the white women adults who started the fight, saying that, hey, you belong in public housing, why don't you get out of here? The person who's hosting that pool party for the African-American teachers, actually mixed-race teenagers, was a person from that community. But no. She's not the boss of she's 19 years old. Presumably pays taxes, her family pays taxes, but she's not the boss of the cop. Did you hear what he said? No. The white people are the boss of the cop, and he's doing what he's supposed to do, come in and attack the black people that he sees. Okay, I mean, they sound like jungle animals, and they're all punks. Did you ever go to a pool party when you were a teenager? I did. Nobody ever came in charging at us. And I got into fights. Believe me, I got into plenty of fights when I was a kid, right? Nobody came charging at me, calling me punks, pulling guns on me, right? Because we were kids. But if you're black, you're not a kid. By the way, you see this throughout all the conservatives talk. I mean, are they really kids? Megyn Kelly said, well, I don't know that the cop could have told us she was 14 or 15, right? You can't tell that. Well, actually, they've done studies on this. One that was released by a respected journal in psychology just last year, explaining that people on average see black kids over 4 years older than they actually are. If you present to them white kids, Latino kids, and white kids and say, are these felons? So you give them that context, okay? College students on average say that black kids are 4.5 years older than they actually are, okay? Way outpacing white and Latino kids, okay? You know who sees the only people who see them older than the college kids do? Cops. Cops see the black kids as 4.6 years older than they actually are. They start to view them as guilty at the age of 10. Before then, well, are they not merciful? They say, well, it's a kid. I'm not sure he knows what he's doing. But for black kids at the age of 10, yeah, looks like an adult, knows what he's doing, gotta go. Punks, right?
Next is the recording I mentioned earlier that the young male who taped the encounters.
Right. Okay. So let's go to the guy who taped it. He's actually a young white kid. He might have an interesting perspective on whether they were targeting blacks or whites. He was there, right? So let's listen.
And the cops showed up, and the parents immediately started yelling, "Oh, you need more cops. There's too many of them." And most of the kids weren't even involved. It was a fight between a mom and a girl, which had nothing to do with all those other kids that she apparently needed more cops for.
It seemed to me, now, I don't know that this is true or not, but it seemed to me like the officers were going for the African-American kids.
Yeah, I do feel that that is true, because I was one of the only white people in the area when that was happening, and you can see in part of the video where he tells us to sit down, and he kind of like skips over me and tells all my African-American friends to go sit down.
You know, you see the officer throw that little girl down, that 14-year-old girl down, and put all this weight on her.
Yes.
What do you think about that, man?
I thought that was very uncalled for. I mean, all she was doing was talking to her friends about the situation, and I think she might have, she was quote-unquote running her mouth, and I mean, she has freedom of speech, and that was very uncalled for to throw her to the ground. When he pulled his gun, my heart dropped as soon as he pulled out his gun. I thought he was going to shoot that kid, and I didn't. That was very scary.
You know, do you think that the mob or the party people, the people that were there, were out of control? Do you think that they
Not
were
at all.
that big?
I think that they were a bunch of kids having fun on the last day of school. I mean, it was a party. We were having fun. The parents said that we were like cursing at them and stuff, which that never happened at all. And they kept on giving us a hard time. I think it's personally because there was a bunch of African Americans in that neighborhood who all came to the pool on the same day.
Right.
So they probably thought they weren't from there or something. And
do you think that they have an issue with black folks being over there?
yeah, and like you can see in my YouTube video in the comment section, there's so many racial discriminations against black people in there.
That's Brandon Brooks. I mean, what a great kid. First, it's great that he was able to tape it. Otherwise, you know what would have happened afterwards. Oh, no, the black people are making it up. No, of course, they were attacking the cop. The cop had to defend himself. The poor guy, right? Except we got it on tape, so they can't use that usual BS defense, right? So thank God he taped it. And if you notice, Brandon Brooks says, like, we were at the party. We were having a good time. We were celebrating. He was at the pool party. He was with the African-American kids. And by the way, there was also apparently Latino kids, Arab kids, etc. It was a mixed party. But as Brandon Brooks himself just said, as you heard it there, he's like, no, the cops just skipped right over me. It's like he was invisible, right? Ironic twist on the invisible man, right? So like, oh, I'm going to go throw people down. Okay, you, guy, you. And he said everybody that was brought down by the cops was either Latino, black, or Arab kid. All the white kids just standing there, invisible. No, probably not racial. No, David Webb and Fox News probably got it right. Nothing new with the race, right? And he's such a good kid, man. He said, look, man, when that guy pulled a gun, some of the people in the community were like, yeah, way to pull the gun. In fact, I'm going to show you one of those people right now. He said, my heart dropped. I thought he was going to shoot that kid, right? Isn't that the human reaction? Isn't that the right reaction? But no. Look at some people in the community. Now, she wanted to hide her face. She's talking to a local reporter here, saying, bravo. Even further.
The discrimination that transpires from these actions from not only the police but others that contribute to society are physically as well as psychologically affecting African American adolescents. A study called Private Regard, Identity Protection, and Perceived Racism Among African American Males showed greater anxiety and depressive symptoms when dealing with racist encounters. Those who had a high regard by viewing themselves as equal and worthy experienced lower depression. In another study, how perceived racism and coping affect cardiovascular disease among African Americans, detects racism as a stressor, both acute and chronic, which promotes high blood pressure, which leads to the cause of cardiovascular disease. African Americans face a dilemma when it comes to protecting neighborhoods from crime and drugs. African Americans are viewed as criminals. Fearful for young men for just being African American, never viewed as being innocent, but always guilty. Anxiety and depression sets in, which creates a problem physically and psychologically. How adolescents view themselves is extremely important. So viewing themselves as less than a person due to their race because of what the world, white Americans, perceive them to be, is giving African Americans youth no sense of existence, and it sets them up for failure. This concludes my presentation on the life stage of adolescence and African Americans viewed as an inferior race.